Hello, everybody. My name is Camille Howe, and I wanted to share with you a little bit about my research paper that I wrote on creativity. So for my paper, I took the exploratory essay route. What sparked the idea for this paper on creativity was kind of my own exploration of my creativity. And so I wanted to make it kind of a more personal paper, and I thought that the exploratory route was a little more fitting for this topic. So yeah, the idea around this paper was that I myself was having troubles with my own creativity and believing that I was a creative person. So I kind of wanted to explore that a little bit in this paper. Explore, just kind of what it means to be a creative person. So some questions that I had coming into the paper were, what makes a creative person? Where does creativity come from? And what influences our creativity? So to answer these questions and explore them a little bit further, I had some areas that I kind of highlighted and looked at a little more in depth in my paper. And the first one was family. And with family, I kind of looked at more of, I guess, their influence in terms of like support. How is family support important for creativity? And I found that through research that family support is very important for the development of creativity. It is not essential. In fact, research proves that a lack of support from family can actually be quite a big motivator for further exploration into creativity. So it can kind of be a motivator in as much as, needing to prove oneself to their family, which I thought was really interesting. Also, after talking to a couple of my interviewees, some of them had support from their family, others did not. Funny enough, they both went into creative areas. So it's not essential, but it does help. Next, I looked at school. And for school, it was not so important that someone did well in school or in the art fields in order to be a creative person. But what was important with school is the mentorship that usually comes with schooling, because especially if people are not getting the support from family, that sort of push towards creativity to explore needs to be present, and that's most often found within a school environment. Again, speaking to my interviewees, what was most important for their development was peers and were different teachers. So people who believed in your abilities and pushed you farther. And also peers were important because being able to collaborate and also being able to see other people's work really helped in the development of one's own creativity. And then finally, I wanted to look a little bit more closer at work, and kind of with that comes the societal strains of creativity. What I found was getting a job in the creative fields does not necessarily a creative person make. Speaking to one of my interviewees, she's a photography professor, and she found that actually her job, although it is in her creative field, can detract from her own personal creativity, just given the strains of the job and her time commitment to it. And so that kind of goes along with the societal strains on creativity. having to pay the bills and work to make money. All these do not really add to creativity because they take away from that time where you can be exploring and working on your creativity. One of the main theories that I looked at in my paper was the investment theory, and this is by a research psychologist by the name of Robert Sternberg. And this theory is a confluence or merge of 6 different resources: intellectual skills, knowledge, personality, styles of thinking, environment, and motivation. So intellectual skills, obviously, knowledge, gaining knowledge on, your area of creativity, what interests you. Personality means kind of being able to move beyond obstacles. Styles of thinking, kind of meaning being able to look at the details, but then also the bigger picture. Environment is important, having a supportive environment or somewhere, something that's going to push your creativity forward. And then your own personal motivation, so a want and a need to create or and be creative. Sternberg said that a lack of one resource can be compensated by a surplus of another. So maybe you don't really have the knowledge, say, but you have a surplus of motivation that can motivate you to gain more knowledge. And finally, I think the most important point about this theory is that Sternberg sees all these coming together kind of as a decision, and sees creativity as a decision to use all these skills towards creativity, yet also a decision to hone these skills. So you can really, meaning you can develop these skills. And finally, to understand this idea a little bit more, I decided to look at one of the greatest creative minds of our time, Leonardo da Vinci. And as I was exploring him, I kind of realized that he kind of embodies the investment theory. We know him mainly as a painter, but he also dabbled in mathematics, architecture, anatomy, and he also worked on play sets. So Leonardo was born out of wedlock, so he didn't have access to formal schooling. So everything that he learned, he kind of learned on his own. So he was very self-motivated, and he took charge of his education. And because of just his general curiosity, he became very knowledgeable, and he created an environment that promoted this creativity. So he surrounded himself with artists and scientists, and really this idea that also kind of developed in my paper was the idea of sort of knowledge for knowledge's sake. And how that kind of plays into creativity is that our idea of creativity these days is really centered around kind of products, what we produce, what can be seen. And this is kind of a more modern idea of creativity. And as one of my sources pointed out, it's kind of based around our consumer society and how products are so important to us these days. So, if we can't see the end product, then, how do we know, what got us there was creative? And so, but in Leonardo's case, yes, he was a painter, he created. But really the process of that creativity was so important, and kind of got him to where he was creatively at the end of his life. So I think what was really exciting for me is that creativity was no longer was it based on education or a certain job. I always thought that creativity, you had to go into the arts, or you had to produce a huge body of work in order to be creative. But after doing all this research, I've kind of realized that creativity is much more simple than that. And if what Sternberg says is true, that in his investment theory, that all those skills can be developed, and if what Leonardo's perspective on creativity is true, then it's coming from inside. Creativity is coming from inside and is very self-motivated. So kind of to end my paper, and what started this paper in the first place was a book I was reading called The Artist's Way, and it is, for lack of a better phrase, a creativity self-help book. And so I kind of made this book my final source, and basically what this book does is it kind of gets one in touch with themselves through these tools called the morning pages and the artist date. So the morning pages are 3 pages longhand that one does every morning, and then the artist date is a date by yourself that you do once a week. And together these create kind of a time spent alone. So what Julia Cameron's really focusing on is that kind of this idea, like I said before, is that creativity is an internal endeavor. In order to be creative and to be able to put something out there into the world that says, hey, this is our idea about the world, we need to first get in touch with ourselves and understand what our own ideas on the world are. And so, yeah, I think that's what was most exciting about this paper, is that I realized that I had this idea of creativity and that it needed to be, needed to have a job in the creative fields. You needed to create a body of work, and all these things, and have the support from family and friends. But what I realized is that actually creativity is something that can be developed, and that it's not something that's set in stone. Rather, it's something that needs to be worked on, and it comes from within. It's an internal thing. So yeah, thanks so much for listening.